The great hall of the Coalition Council stood high above the shining city of Lumeris Prime. The ceiling stretched into a dome of glass, showing the endless stars outside. Flags of many worlds hung on tall silver poles, and at the center, a long oval table shone under pale lights. Around it sat leaders from dozens of species, their voices buzzing like a storm. Some were tall and thin, others small with glowing eyes, and still others looked like moving clouds of light. Each carried the weight of their own world, their own people. At one end of the table sat Captain Alara, a respected diplomat of the Sarathi. Her skin shimmered with a pale blue glow, her long hands folded calmly. She was known for her wisdom and careful judgment. Across from her stood Marcus Hale, a human soldier in shining armor. The armor was scratched from past battles, each mark a memory of survival. His eyes burned with intensity, not of anger but of determination. The council meeting had begun with reports of danger. Scouts spoke of strange movements on the borders, fleets gathering in the shadows of distant systems. The Vedris Empire, silent for years, was preparing for something. Some leaders wanted to wait to gather more information. Others pushed for stronger defenses. Marcus was the first to rise. "If we wait," he said firmly, his voice echoing, "we give them time." The Vedris are not patient planners. They strike when they sense weakness. We must act now. Send ships to protect the colonies. Move supplies. Prepare the people. A low murmur spread across the chamber. Some nodded at his words. Others shook their heads. Ilara lifted her hand, her glowing skin shimmering softly. "You speak with passion, Marcus," she said, her voice calm, almost musical. "But passion is not strategy. If we rush without knowing the full truth, we risk provoking a war. The coalition must act with wisdom, not with haste." Marcus clenched his fists at his sides. Wisdom does not mean waiting until it's too late. "I've fought the Vedris. I know their ways. They respect strength and nothing else." Her eyes met his, sharp and unyielding. "And yet your way, human, is always the same. Bold charges, daring risks. You survive, yes, but survival of one does not mean victory for all. This council cannot follow the temper of a single soldier." The words cut deeper than she expected. Marcus's jaw tightened. For years he had stood beside her, fighting not only in battles but also in negotiations. He had believed they trusted him, that his actions had meaning beyond the field. To hear her speak so dismissively struck him like a blade. "I am not just a soldier," he said quietly. "I am here because I've saved lives, because I've done what others feared to do." Alara's voice grew colder. "And how many lives were lost because of your recklessness? You are a human, Marcus, and perhaps humans can afford to treat life so carelessly. But the rest of us cannot." The hall grew silent. The words echoed in every ear. The other leaders looked down, unwilling to speak. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. He felt the weight of every scar on his armor, every battle he had fought for people who now doubted him. He reached up slowly, unfastening the clasps of his chest plate. The sound of metal unlocking rang across the chamber. Piece by piece he removed his armor. The armor that had protected him through fire and storm. The armor that had become a symbol of his role as guardian of the coalition. When the last piece fell to the floor with a heavy clang, Marcus stood unarmored, only a simple uniform beneath. He looked at Alara, and though his voice was calm, his eyes were filled with pain. "If my presence is only seen as reckless, then I have no place here," he said. "I will not waste my voice in a hall that does not hear." Without waiting for an answer, he turned and walked toward the tall doors at the back of the chamber. His boots echoed with every step. No one moved to stop him. The doors opened with a hiss, and the human who had stood as their shield stepped out into the shadows of the city, leaving the council stunned and silent. Ilara kept her hands folded tightly, though her chest felt heavy. She told herself that her words were necessary, that the council could not bend to the will of one man. But as she replayed the look in his eyes, a strange unease began to stir inside her. Outside the council hall, Marcus walked into the night streets of Lumeris Prime. The city lights glittered like rivers of stars, but to him they felt cold. He had once believed this place was a home, a symbol of unity among the stars. Now it felt like stone walls closing in. He walked past markets where alien traders called out their wares, past small groups of children laughing in languages he did not know. Many looked up at him as he passed, recognizing the human who had fought for them. Some smiled, others bowed their heads. But Marcus could not smile back. He carried no armor now, and without it he felt the weight of their trust pressing harder on his shoulders. He found himself at the edge of the city, where the bright towers gave way to quiet landing docks. Ships of all shapes rested there, some sleek and silver, others rough and patched. He stopped before a small freighter, its hull scratched and dented but sturdy. For a long time Marcus stood there staring at the ship. Memories of battles of allies lost and saved flickered in his mind. He thought of Ilara's words, sharp as glass, reckless, careless, human. He had never seen himself that way. To him, risk was not carelessness. It was choice. It was the decision to move when others froze, to stand when others fell. Was that wrong? The stars above offered no answer. Back in the council hall, voices slowly returned. Some leaders whispered that Ilara had been too harsh. Others said Marcus had proven her right by leaving so easily. But all of them felt the same cold truth. The coalition was weaker without him. Ilara remained seated, her gaze fixed on the empty chair across the table. She did not show her feelings, but deep inside, a quiet doubt began to grow. She had seen Marcus fight, had seen his strength when all else failed. She had trusted him once. Now he was gone. And somewhere in the silent night, as Marcus prepared to leave the shining city behind, the stars shifted. In the darkness beyond the borders, the Vedris stirred. The rift had begun. The days after Marcus left passed slowly inside the Coalition Council. The once busy chamber where voices clashed like thunder now carried an unusual silence. Leaders still gathered, they still argued, and they still voted. But the absence of the human soldier was like a shadow none of them could ignore. For years, Marcus had been the one to speak when others hesitated, the one to step forward when danger threatened. Now, whenever bold action was needed, no voice rose to carry the burden. His chair at the long oval table remained empty, a silent reminder that something vital had been lost. Ilara sat in her usual place, her pale blue skin glowing faintly under the lights. Outwardly, she appeared calm, but inside her heart weighed heavier each day. She tried to convince herself that her harsh words had been necessary. The coalition had to think carefully, not act rashly. Yet each time she closed her eyes, she remembered the look on Marcus's face as he removed his armor and walked away. That look stayed with her like a wound. Outside the council hall, the galaxy kept moving. The Vedris Empire, quiet for years, began stirring like a beast waking from sleep. Traders reported seeing their ships along border systems, silent and watchful. Colonists sent warnings of scouts hiding in asteroid belts. Each report built a rising sense of dread. Still, the council debated endlessly. Some leaders argued that the Vedris only wanted to scare them. Others urged for patrol fleets. Without Marcus, the balance leaned toward caution. Caution meant delay. Delay meant weakness. Marcus himself had left Lumeris Prime behind. Alone, he wandered through space in the small freighter he had chosen that night. He did not announce his departure to the council. He did not look back. The ship carried him through quiet star lanes and forgotten outposts. At first, he traveled with no purpose, only wanting distance from the voices that had judged him. But as he moved, he found himself drawn into the lives of ordinary people. On a mining colony scarred by a recent accident, he helped clear rubble with his own hands, pulling trapped workers from collapsed tunnels. On a trading station plagued by pirates, he advised the defenders, showing them simple ways to fight back without costly weapons. On a lonely world where food supplies had run low, he shared what little his ship carried, then hunted with the locals to help them survive. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. They whispered about the human who had fought in battles beyond count, the man who had stood before alien armies and lived. Some expected him to still wear his shining armor, but when they saw him in only a plain uniform, they grew curious. "You are Marcus Hale?" one young boy asked in awe on the mining colony. "The warrior from the stories?" Marcus only smiled faintly. "I am just a man," he said. "A man who does what he can." Though he traveled alone, his name spread quickly. Each village, each station, each outpost he helped carried his story to the next. Soon, tales of Marcus Hale, the human without armor, reached farther than he could imagine. Back in the council hall, things grew worse. The Vedris struck at a small border world, not with a full fleet but with a sudden raid. The local defenders resisted but were overwhelmed. By the time coalition ships arrived, the damage was done. Farms burned, homes shattered, families scattered. The news shook the council. For the first time in years, leaders raised their voices in fear. Still they argued, still they delayed. They sent patrols here and there, but without unity, the actions were weak. And always, in the silence that followed their debates, eyes turned to the empty chair. Ilara could not escape the truth. She felt it in her chest every time she looked at the long table. Marcus had warned them. He had said the Vedris respected only strength. Now his absence was their weakness. At night, in her private chambers, Ilara walked to the wide windows that looked out into the stars. The city below still glittered with light, but her eyes saw only the black void beyond. She remembered her words to Marcus, sharp as blades, reckless, careless, human. She had spoken them in anger, perhaps even fear. For years she had trusted his strength, yet in that moment she had allowed doubt to poison her tongue, and he had left because of it. A whisper of regret haunted her thoughts. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his journey. On a desolate moon, he helped a band of settlers repair their failing power grid. On a merchant ship caught in a solar storm, he guided the crew through safe passage. Each act was small, but to those he aided, it meant survival. Slowly, Marcus began to understand something he had never considered before. His worth was not only on the battlefield. He could inspire hope simply by being there, by showing people that they were not forgotten. He was more than armor, more than a soldier. Yet he carried no pride in it. Instead, he carried sorrow. For all his actions, the council, the heart of the coalition, had turned from him. One voice, one set of harsh words, had stripped away the trust he thought unshakable. Still, he did not stop moving. The Vedris grew bolder. Another raid struck deeper inside coalition territory. Then another. Fleets were seen massing on the edge of the outer rim. The council grew desperate. In one meeting, a young leader from the Miran species stood and spoke sharply. "We sit here and argue while our worlds burn. Where is Marcus Hale? Where is the human who once stood fearless among us?" The words caused a stir. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others muttered that Marcus had abandoned them. Ilara remained silent. Her hands tightened against each other, her calm mask beginning to crack. She wanted to say he had not abandoned them, that they had driven him away. But her pride held her tongue. That night, however, she left the council hall and walked through the quiet streets of Lumeris Prime. She passed the same markets and towers Marcus had walked past, though she did not know it. She reached the docks, staring at the place where his freighter had once been. The space was empty now, but she could almost see him standing there, torn between staying and leaving. Her chest ached with something she could no longer deny: regret. Out among the stars, Marcus felt the weight of the galaxy shifting. News of raids reached him wherever he went. Colonists asked him if the coalition would protect them, and he had no answer. He wanted to believe they would, but doubt gnawed at him. He stood on the deck of his small freighter one night, staring out into the endless darkness. His reflection in the glass looked older, more tired. He touched the spot on his chest where armor once rested. "Ilara," he whispered softly, though no one could hear. "Was I truly reckless? Or did you simply not understand?" The stars gave no reply, but somewhere in that silence Marcus made a choice. He would keep moving, keep helping, not for the council, but for the people. Whether or not the coalition wanted him, the galaxy still needed him. Back in the council, Ilara began a search. Quietly, without announcement, she gathered reports of where Marcus had been seen. Each story carried the same theme: the human who gave hope, who fought without armor, who never asked for anything in return. The absence of Marcus Hale was no longer only a shadow over the council. It was a growing reminder that one human, alone, could do what the entire coalition failed to do. And Ilara, though she would not yet admit it, began to realize that her harsh words had not only wounded him, they had wounded the future of them all. The rift between them was now wider than ever. But somewhere beyond the stars, Marcus Hale was still moving, and his absence was changing everything. The galaxy trembled as the Vedris grew bold. What had once been whispers of danger became a storm of fire. Their ships, sharp like blades of black steel, cut across border systems without mercy. Colonies burned, stations fell silent, and fear spread from one world to another like a wave too strong to stop. The coalition tried to fight, but their fleets moved without unity. In the council chamber, leaders shouted across the table, each voice pulling in a different direction. Some wanted to fortify their homeworlds, others wanted to strike back, while many still called for caution. Without Marcus Hale, there was no single voice to cut through the noise, no daring plan to rally them. And every time defeat reached their ears, eyes turned once again to the empty chair. The first great loss came at Arvin Outpost, a mining colony built inside the rings of a gas giant. The coalition sent ships to defend it, but their movements were slow, predictable. The Vaedri swept in with a sudden strike, using hidden paths through the rings. By the time help arrived, the outpost was gone, its towers broken, its people scattered into the void. News of Arvin shook the galaxy. Families mourned, traders whispered of leaving coalition space, and soldiers questioned whether their leaders could protect them. The spirit of unity was crumbling. Ilara sat in the council hall that day, her heart heavy. She listened as leaders traded blame like children quarreling. Her hands folded tightly on the table, but her mind was far away. She remembered Marcus's warning. The Vaedris respect strength and nothing else. He had been right. That night, Ilara walked alone through the streets of Lumeris Prime. The city still glowed, but the laughter in the markets was thinner now, weighed down by fear. She thought of Marcus again, of the way he had walked out of the hall after her words. For days, she had fought against her guilt, telling herself she had only done her duty. But the more she saw of the coalition's weakness, the more she knew the truth. She had driven away the one man who could have made a difference. She began her search quietly. She asked traders for news, read reports from distant colonies, and listened to stories that spread like fire in the dark. Everywhere she found the same thing: tales of Marcus Hale. On one farming world, he had helped rebuild homes after raiders struck. On a damaged freighter, he had stood with the crew, guiding them through storms. On a forgotten moon, he had taught villagers how to defend themselves with nothing more than determination and courage. "He is different," said one old colonist when Ilara questioned him. "He does not stay long, but when he comes, he reminds us we are not alone. He gives hope." Ilara felt her chest tighten. This was the Marcus she had known once, though she had forgotten it in her pride. He was more than armor, more than reckless courage. He was a force that lifted others, that inspired even the weakest to stand tall. While Ilara followed his trail, the Vaedris pressed harder. Their attack spread beyond the border. A fleet struck, deep into coalition space, hitting the world of Zareth. The defenders fought bravely, but without bold leadership, their ships fell one by one. The planet's surface burned in places where once stood green forests. Panic spread through the coalition. Refugees poured into safer systems, their stories filling the air with fear. Whole markets turned silent when Vaedris fleets were mentioned. Even the strongest species of the council began to falter. Ilara sat through every council session, her mind racing. She could no longer stay silent. "This path will lead to ruin," she said one evening, her voice sharp enough to still the chamber. "We wait, we argue, and the enemy strikes again and again. We need someone who dares to act, someone who does not fear risk." A council member sneered. "And you mean the human, the reckless one who abandoned us?" Ilara's voice did not shake. "No, he did not abandon us. We drove him away, and now the galaxy suffers for it." The chamber fell quiet. Some turned their eyes away, unwilling to face the truth. But others looked thoughtful, perhaps even ashamed. Far away, Marcus continued his journey. He did not hear the council's debates, but he felt the weight of the war pressing on every colony he visited. People asked him questions he could not answer. Will the coalition save us? Will the Vaedris come here next? He wanted to promise safety, but he could not. He knew the coalition was too slow, too divided. One night on the deck of his freighter, Marcus stood under the endless stars. His reflection in the glass showed a man weary but unbroken. He thought of Ilara again, of her cold words. Reckless, careless, human. Yet as he looked at the stars, he felt something stirring within him. Perhaps she had been wrong, but perhaps she had also given him a strange gift. Without the council, without armor, He had discovered another side of himself, not just a fighter, but a builder of hope. Still, he could not shake the question, would it ever be enough against the Vedris? Ilara's search finally led her to a remote station on the edge of known space. There, she heard of a human who had stood against raiders with nothing but courage, rallying farmers and traders to fight back. She knew at once it was Marcus, but when she asked where he had gone next, the answer was always the same. Farther. Always farther. Her heart ached with both relief and sorrow. He lived, he still fought, but he was drifting farther from the council, farther from her. And while she searched, the Vedris prepared their largest strike yet. Fleets gathered like storm clouds on the horizon, ready to fall upon the coalition. The rising threat was no longer a whisper. It was a roar that shook the galaxy. And both, Marcus and Ilara, walking separate paths, knew that the storm was only beginning. The darkness of space carried a quiet tension that few could ignore. Across the coalition, the Vedris had begun their largest campaign yet. Fleets of black steel ships moved in formation, ready to strike at the heart of human-influenced colonies and beyond. Star systems that had once felt safe now trembled under the shadow of the approaching threat. Inside the council hall on Lumeris Prime, leaders shouted over each other. The air was thick with fear and frustration. Some argued for evacuation, others for desperate strikes, but no plan could unite them. The absence of Marcus Hale had become a chasm the council could not cross. Ilara sat at her place, her hands folded, her mind racing. She had spent months following whispers of Marcus's movements, tracing the trails he left across the stars. Everywhere he went, he had helped ordinary people survive. He had fought, he had led, he had inspired. And now, as the Vedris approached the outer systems, she knew there was only one hope left. We cannot hold them without him, she whispered, almost to herself. We cannot survive without Marcus Hale. Far from Lumeris Prime, Marcus sailed through the silent lanes of space aboard his freighter. It was not a warship, not an imposing machine of combat. It was a small vessel, patched and repaired countless times, but it carried him safely across systems. On board, he stored supplies for colonies in need, taught settlers simple tactics to defend themselves, and coordinated relief for stations under threat. He had seen fear in the eyes of countless people, and yet he had also seen courage bloom where it had seemed impossible. Children in mining towns trained with slings and shields. Settlers built small defenses with limited resources, and traders once fearful of raiders now moved with purpose. Even without the council's blessing, Marcus realized he had created something more powerful than strategy: hope. One evening, as he charted a path through the asteroid belt of Kiral 7, his sensors picked up a signal. It was weak, faint, but unmistakable. A distress beacon from a coalition outpost under Vedris attack. The human within him stirred. He did not hesitate. Activating the freighter's thrusters, he raced toward the signal, weaving between asteroids with precision born of years of battle. Within hours, he arrived. The outpost was under siege, small ships of the Vedris hovering like vultures above. The defenders fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and poorly coordinated. Marcus acted immediately. He transmitted instructions to the defenders, showing them how to use their environment to their advantage. He guided miners to block corridors, traders to move supplies efficiently, and pilots to focus on key targets rather than spreading themselves thin. Then he led a small strike team of volunteers from the outpost itself. With no armor but unmatched confidence, Marcus piloted a damaged craft into the enemy formation, distracting the Vedris long enough for the defenders to regroup. The enemy faltered, confused by his daring. Within hours, the Vedris were forced to retreat. The outpost had survived. People cheered, tears running down faces smudged with smoke and dust. Marcus did not bask in glory. He simply ensured that every person was safe before leaving. Word of his actions spread like wildfire. Every colony he helped, every station he saved, carried stories of a human who led without command, who fought without armor, and who inspired more than any general could. By the time he approached the edge of the outer rim, Marcus had become a figure of legend among ordinary people. Ilara, tracking him, finally received reports that confirmed what she had hoped. He was alive. He was leading not armies but people, civilians, traders, even former rivals, into coordinated defense and survival. She did not hesitate. Gathering what small fleet she could muster, she departed Lumeris Prime to find him. Her ship cut through space like a silver arrow, the pale blue light of her skin reflecting determination. She could not fail. Marcus was the key, and she had to bring him back. The final approach was tense. The Vedris fleet loomed near the Coalition's key trade routes, its shadow threatening hundreds of worlds. Marcus did not wait for orders. He had already coordinated with scattered groups. Traders moved to safe zones, settlers formed patrols, and freighters carried vital supplies where they were needed most. When he saw Alara's fleet approaching, he did not pause. He signaled her, guiding her through a narrow asteroid field where Vedris ships could not easily follow. She watched, astonished, as he moved with a calm precision that no council could dictate. "Marcus," she called over the comms. "We need you. The fleets are not enough. We cannot hold them without you." He did not reply immediately. Instead, he maneuvered his ship to position the defenders for a final stand. Only when the situation stabilized did he speak. "I never left," he said quietly. "I only went where I was needed. If you want to fight together, then fight beside us, not above us." Alara felt a wave of relief and admiration. He had not sought glory. He had not waited for recognition. He had acted for the people, and in doing so had built an army where none existed. The battle began in earnest. The Vedris struck hard, but Marcus's strategies combined with Alara's fleet created an unexpected resistance. Small patched ships fought alongside advanced coalition vessels. Traders, miners, and settlers manned defenses, following Marcus's instructions with courage. At the heart of the chaos, Marcus moved with calm authority. He directed fighters, repaired damaged systems in the heat of combat, and inspired those around him to act without fear. His human ingenuity turned what seemed impossible into achievable victories. Alara fought alongside him, coordinating the fleet while learning from his instincts. She realized that Marcus's strength was not only in combat skill, but in his ability to see possibilities where others saw only limits. By the end of the battle, the Vedris had been forced to retreat. The coalition fleets had survived, and the outposts remained intact. Victory was not complete, but it was significant enough to shift the morale of the galaxy. After the fight, Marcus did not return to the council. Instead, he gathered with the civilians and volunteers who had fought beside him. He spoke to them not as a commander, but as one of them. "You have done more than you think," he said, his voice steady and calm. "You have defended your homes. You have stood when others might have fallen. Remember this feeling. The courage you have now will guide you in the days ahead." Alara approached him then, her expression sincere. "I was wrong," she said. "I judged you too quickly. Your strength is more than courage in battle. It is the heart you give to others. I need your guidance. The council needs you." Marcus looked at her, the faintest smile touching his lips. "I never left to abandon anyone. I acted where I was needed most. If the council is ready to listen, then I will fight with you. But we do it together, as equals, not as orders from above." Alara nodded, understanding at last the true meaning of his leadership. Together they began planning the next steps for the coalition, combining the council's resources with Marcus's unorthodox strategies and the unity of countless civilians he had inspired. The legend of Marcus Hale, the human who had left his armor and still saved worlds, began to grow. Stories spread of his return, of how he had united people who had no weapons, no ships, and no authority, yet had stood against an empire. His courage inspired more than just soldiers. It awakened the spirit of entire worlds. And in that moment, Alara realized something profound. Humanity's true strength was not in armor, ships, or weapons, but in the willingness to act, to inspire and to protect others no matter the cost. The Vedris had underestimated them. The galaxy had underestimated the human, and Marcus Hale was back. The galaxy was quiet but not empty. After the battle that marked Marcus Hale's return, whispers of his deeds spread from system to system. The people he had inspired, the colonies he had saved, and the countless civilians he had guided now spoke of him in awe. The legend of the human who had laid down his armor and yet led armies without authority was known in every corner of coalition space. But peace was fragile. The Vedris Empire had retreated for now, yet their shadow still lingered along the borders. They were wounded but not defeated, and the threat would return if the coalition did not learn from its mistakes. Inside the council hall on Lumeris Prime, the atmosphere had shifted. Gone were the chaotic arguments and endless debates. Leaders, humbled by recent events, sat quietly, listening to reports and considering strategies with greater care. But one thing remained missing: the human who had changed the course of so many lives. Alara, sitting in her usual place, felt a strange sense of calm. Yet beneath it was a weight of responsibility she could not ignore. Marcus had shown them that courage alone was not enough. Wisdom combined with action, empathy, and trust could achieve the impossible. She rose from her chair and addressed the council. "We have learned a lesson the hard way," she said. "Strength alone cannot protect us. It is our unity, our willingness to act, and our care for one another that gives us hope. And one human, Marcus Hale, has reminded us of that truth." The leaders murmured among themselves. Some looked skeptical, but most felt a quiet respect, understanding that Marcus's actions had not only saved worlds but had awakened the spirit of the coalition. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his work among the colonies. Even after returning to help the coalition, he did not immediately go back to the council. His priority remained the people who needed guidance, reassurance, and protection. On the planet Veora, he helped rebuild a trading station damaged by raids. Settlers who had once been fearful and uncertain now worked with confidence. Children trained with simple defenses. Miners repaired the station's energy grids, and traders learned to coordinate supply routes. Marcus guided them all, not as a commander, but as a partner. A young girl holding a makeshift shield looked up at him and asked, "Will the Vedris come back?" Marcus crouched to her level, his eyes calm and steady. "Perhaps," he said softly. "But you are stronger than you think. You and your people can protect yourselves. Remember, courage is not about armor or weapons. It is about standing up when it matters most." Her eyes widened with understanding. "So, I can help?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Yes, you already are." Ilara, having gathered enough reports, finally traveled to meet him. Their reunion was quiet, without fanfare. No council chambers, no formal introductions, just two individuals standing beneath the stars reflecting on what had happened. "I underestimated you," Ilara admitted, her voice sincere. "I judged you by your armor, by your boldness, and I spoke harshly. I see now that your strength was never just in your fighting skills. It was in your heart, your ability to inspire, and the courage to act where others hesitated." Marcus shook his head gently. "I left not because of anger, but because I needed to see where I could make a difference. Armor and orders can only do so much. People, their will to survive, their courage, that is what truly matters." Ilara studied him, the light of the stars reflecting in her pale blue skin. "You have shown me what humanity can do, not just for the coalition, but for everyone who feels hopeless. You are more than a soldier, Marcus. You are a teacher of courage." Marcus gave a faint smile. "I only do what I can. The rest is in the hands of those who choose to stand." The Vedris remained a threat, but the coalition had changed. Leaders who had once argued endlessly now sought cooperation. Fleets moved with coordination, supply lines strengthened, and colonies trained for defense under Marcus's guidance. The human had not only returned, but had reshaped the way the coalition understood itself. Ilara watched as Marcus worked with settlers, traders, and soldiers alike. He did not command with authority alone. He led by example, showing that anyone, regardless of rank or species, could contribute meaningfully. The council eventually invited him back formally, but Marcus, true to his nature, declined the armor and the title. He would serve, yes, but not as a symbol or a weapon. He would serve alongside the people, teaching, inspiring, and acting where needed. "This armor," he told Ilara, "was never the source of my strength. It was the trust of those around me, the courage of ordinary people, and the willingness to face the unknown. That is what I bring. That is what humanity brings," Ilara nodded. She understood now. Humans were underestimated not because they lacked skill, but because their spirit was different, unpredictable, daring, compassionate, and endlessly resilient. The coalition began to thrive in ways it never had before. Colonies became self-sufficient, alliances grew stronger, and ordinary people realized they could shape their own destiny. Stories of Marcus Hale spread like wildfire, tales of the human who laid down his armor but stood taller than any general, fought battles without armies, and inspired courage where despair had ruled. On Lumeris Prime, Ilara addressed the council once more. Marcus has reminded us of a truth we cannot ignore. Strength is meaningless without heart. Technology, strategy, and weapons are tools, but they are nothing without courage and trust. We must carry this lesson forward, for the Vedris or any other who seeks to challenge us. The council fell silent. For once, silence carried understanding, not fear or doubt. Marcus continued to move among the stars, appearing wherever he was needed most. He helped repair colonies, coordinated defenses, and trained settlers and soldiers alike. But always he remained humble, never seeking glory or praise. His work became the heart of a new coalition, one built not just on power but on inspiration, unity, and hope. Ilara often accompanied him, learning from his methods, seeing firsthand how courage spread from one person to another. Together they built a coalition that could stand against any threat, grounded in the strength of many rather than the authority of one. One quiet evening, Marcus stood on the deck of his freighter, looking at a sky filled with stars. He thought of all the worlds he had touched, the people he had helped, and the lessons he had learned. Armor had been heavy on his shoulders, but the weight of responsibility, courage, and hope was heavier. Yet he carried it willingly. Ilara joined him, standing silently beside him. "The galaxy is safer because of you," she said softly. Marcus shook his head. "No, Ilara. The galaxy is safer because people chose to stand, to act, and to trust one another. I only reminded them that they could." She smiled, understanding fully. "And sometimes all it takes is one human to remind everyone of what they are capable of." The stars twinkled above them, silent witnesses to a new era. The Vedris threat remained, but the spirit of the coalition had grown stronger. Humanity had proven its worth not through armor or conquest, but through courage, trust, and the power to inspire others. Marcus Hale, the human who had once walked away, had returned not as a soldier alone, but as a symbol of what one person could do when they believed in others, and the galaxy remembered.